64-year-old woman gives birth. But what the doctor discovered next will leave you speechless. You might think this is just a typical late pregnancy story, but the truth behind what happened is far from ordinary. Imagine being 64 years old and thinking motherhood was behind you. Then suddenly, you're pregnant. That's already shocking enough, right? But after delivering the baby, doctors noticed something they couldn't explain. They ran tests, double-checked their results. What they found out completely turned the medical world upside down. Margaret Wilson stood at her kitchen window, gazing out at the lush garden she had cultivated over the years. At 64, she had settled into a comfortable routine in her cozy home in Millbrook, a small town nestled in the rolling hills of upstate New York. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across her prized rose bushes, their vibrant blooms a testament to her green thumb and patient care. As she sipped her chamomile tea, Margaret reflected on the path her life had taken. Widowed 5 years ago, she had gradually rebuilt her world, finding solace in her gardening, her book club, and her weekly volunteer shifts at the local animal shelter. Her 2 children, both in their 30s, had families of their own now, providing Margaret with the joy of being a grandmother to 4 energetic youngsters. Little did Margaret know that on this serene autumn evening, her life was about to take an unexpected turn, one that would challenge everything she thought she knew about herself and the quiet life she had carefully constructed. The first hint of change came subtly, like the faintest whisper of wind before a storm. Margaret had been feeling unusually tired lately, chalking it up to the changing seasons and perhaps pushing herself too hard in the garden. But there was something else, a nagging feeling she couldn't quite put her finger on. As she set her empty teacup in the sink, a wave of dizziness washed over her. Margaret gripped the edge of the countertop, steadying herself as the room seemed to tilt and sway. "Oh my," she murmured, closing her eyes until the sensation passed. When she opened them again, the kitchen had settled back into place. But a seed of worry had been planted in her mind. That night, as Margaret lay in bed, she found herself unable to sleep. Her mind raced with possibilities, each more unlikely than the last. Was it simply age catching up with her? Or could it be something more serious? The rational part of her brain insisted it was nothing to worry about, but a small voice of intuition whispered that something significant was on the horizon. Little did she know. This was just the beginning of a journey that would test her strength, redefine her understanding of family, and ultimately lead her to discover reservoirs of courage she never knew she possessed. Weeks passed, and Margaret's symptoms persisted. The fatigue deepened, accompanied by occasional bouts of nausea that left her feeling wrung out and weak. Her daughter, Sarah, noticed the change during their weekly video call. "Mom, are you feeling all right?" Sarah's concerned face filled the screen of Margaret's tablet. "You look a bit pale." Margaret forced a smile, not wanting to worry her daughter. "Oh, I'm fine, dear. Just a bit under the weather. Nothing to fuss about." But Sarah wasn't easily fooled. "Mom, promise me you'll see Dr. Hendricks, just to be safe." Reluctantly, Margaret agreed. She had always prided herself on her independence, on being the rock her family could rely on. The thought of becoming a burden to her children filled her with dread. Still, she knew Sarah was right. It was time to get some answers. The following Tuesday, Margaret found herself sitting in Dr. Hendricks' office, her hands clasped tightly in her lap as she described her symptoms. The doctor listened attentively, his brow furrowing as he jotted down notes. "Well, Margaret," he said finally, setting down his pen. "I'd like to run some tests, just to rule out any underlying issues. It's probably nothing serious, but it's always better to be thorough." Margaret nodded, a mixture of relief and apprehension washing over her. As she left the clinic, A part of her hoped that the tests would reveal nothing, that her symptoms would fade away as mysteriously as they had appeared. But another part of her, a part she barely acknowledged, sensed that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The next few days passed in a blur of nervous anticipation. Margaret tried to keep herself busy, tending to her garden with extra vigor and losing herself in the pages of her latest book club selection. But the nagging worry remained, a constant companion as she went about her daily routine. Finally, on a crisp Friday morning, Margaret's phone rang. It was Dr. Hendrick's office, asking her to come in to discuss her test results. The receptionist's voice betrayed nothing, but Margaret's heart raced as she agreed to an appointment that afternoon. As she sat once again in Dr. Hendrick's office, Margaret steeled herself for bad news. She had prepared herself for a range of possibilities, each more daunting than the last. But nothing could have prepared her for the words that came next. Dr. Hendricks cleared his throat, his expression a mixture of disbelief and cautious excitement. "Margaret," he began, "I've triple-checked these results, and I can hardly believe it myself. But there's no doubt about it." He paused, meeting her eyes. "You're pregnant." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Margaret stared at the doctor, certain she had misheard. "What?" she managed to whisper. "Pregnant," Dr. Hendricks repeated gently. "About 8 weeks along, according to these tests." Margaret's mind reeled. Pregnant. At 64. It was impossible. And yet, as the initial shock began to subside, a tiny spark of wonder ignited in her heart. A baby? Now, when she least expected it, as Dr. Hendricks began to explain the risks and considerations of a pregnancy at her age, Margaret found herself torn between fear and an unexpected sense of joy. This was not the quiet, predictable life she had envisioned for herself. This was something entirely new, entirely unexpected. As she left the clinic that day, Margaret felt as though she was stepping into a new world. The familiar streets of Millbrook seemed somehow different, filled with new possibilities and challenges. She placed a hand on her still flat stomach, marveling at the miracle growing within her. This was just the beginning, she realized. The real journey, one that would test her strength, redefine her relationships, and challenge everything she thought she knew about herself, was only just beginning. The news of Margaret's pregnancy spread through Millbrook like wildfire. In a town where the opening of a new coffee shop qualified as major news, the idea of a 64-year-old woman expecting a child was nothing short of revolutionary. Margaret found herself at the center of a whirlwind of attention. Neighbors she had barely spoken to in years suddenly appeared on her doorstep, bearing casseroles and offers of support. The local newspaper requested an interview, which Margaret politely declined. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from old friends and distant relatives, all expressing a mixture of shock, concern, and cautious congratulations. But the most challenging conversations were yet to come. Margaret knew she needed to tell her children, and the thought filled her with a complex mixture of emotions. How would they react? Would they be happy for her, or would they think she had lost her mind? She decided to tell Sarah first, inviting her daughter over for Sunday lunch. As they sat in Margaret's sunlit dining room, the words tumbled out before she could second-guess herself. "Sarah, sweetheart, I have some news," Margaret began, her voice trembling slightly. I'm pregnant." Sarah's fork clattered to her plate. She stared at her mother, her expression cycling through disbelief, confusion, and finally, a cautious sort of wonder. "Mom," she whispered, "are you sure?" Margaret nodded, reaching across the table to take her daughter's hand. "I know it's a shock. Believe me, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it myself." To Margaret's surprise and relief, Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, Mom," she said, squeezing her mother's hand. It's incredible. I mean, it's crazy and terrifying and wonderful all at once." As they talked through the afternoon, Margaret felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Sarah's support meant everything to her. Together, they called Margaret's son, Michael, and broke the news to him as well. Though initially stunned into silence, Michael eventually found his voice. "Well, Mom," he said, a note of wry humor in his voice, "I guess this means the kids will have an aunt or uncle younger than they are." As the days passed, Margaret found herself navigating a new reality. Her body, which she had come to know so well over the years, was changing in ways both familiar and strange. Morning sickness plagued her, but it was accompanied by a surge of energy she hadn't felt in years. Dr. Hendricks had referred her to a specialist in high-risk pregnancies, and Margaret's calendar quickly filled with appointments and checkups. Each visit brought new information, new precautions to take, and new milestones to celebrate. But amid the flurry of medical concerns and practical preparations, Margaret found moments of pure, unadulterated joy. The first time she heard the baby's heartbeat, strong and steady on the ultrasound, tears streamed down her face. She began talking to her unborn child, sharing her fears, her hopes, and her promise to love them unconditionally. As her belly began to swell, Margaret's garden took on new significance. She imagined teaching her child about the cycles of nature, watching them toddle through the rows of flowers and vegetables. The future, which had once seemed so settled and predictable, now stretched before her like an uncharted sea, full of possibilities and challenges. Yet even as she embraced this new chapter, Margaret couldn't shake a lingering fear. At 64, would she have the energy to keep up with a growing child? Would she even live long enough to see them grow up? These thoughts haunted her in the quiet hours of the night, when the rest of the world slept and her baby kicked and rolled within her. But with each passing day, Margaret's determination grew stronger. She began to see her age not as a limitation, but as an asset. She had a lifetime of wisdom to share, a depth of love that only experience could bring. This child, she decided, would know a mother who had lived, who had loved and lost, and found the strength to love again. As autumn gave way to winter, and winter slowly melted into spring, Margaret Wilson prepared for the greatest adventure of her life. In a world that often overlooked women her age, she was about to prove that it's never too late for a new beginning, never too late for a miracle. As Margaret's pregnancy progressed, the initial shock that had rippled through Millbrook began to transform into something altogether different. The town, which had always prided itself on its close-knit community, rallied around Margaret in ways she could never have anticipated. It started small. Mrs. Abernathy from the book club brought over a stack of parenting books, some so new the spines had never been cracked, others well-worn and filled with handwritten notes from her own journey as a mother decades ago. "I thought you might like to see how things have changed," she said with a wink, "and how some things never do." Then there was Mr. Grayson, the retired carpenter who lived 2 doors down. He appeared on Margaret's porch one Saturday morning, toolbox in hand. "I heard you might be needing a nursery," he said gruffly, his weathered face breaking into a shy smile. "Thought I might lend a hand." Before Margaret knew it, her spare room was transformed. Soft yellow paint replaced the faded wallpaper, and a beautiful handcrafted crib stood in the corner, a labor of love from Mr. Grayson and a group of his fellow retirees. The local knitting circle, led by the irrepressible Dottie Chen, took it upon themselves to ensure the baby would have the most extensive collection of booties, mittens, and tiny hats in the county. Every week, a new package would appear on Margaret's doorstep, filled with soft, colorful creations. Even the town's teenagers got involved. A group from the high school's computer club approached Margaret with an idea for a smart nursery, complete with a baby monitor that could send updates to her phone and a projection system that could display soothing images on the ceiling. Margaret, who still sometimes struggled with her smartphone, found herself touched by their enthusiasm and willingness to bridge the generational gap. As her due date approached, Margaret found herself at the center of an impromptu support network that spanned generations. Young mothers from the local playgroup shared tips on the latest baby gear, while grandmothers passed on time-honored wisdom about soothing colicky infants and the importance of trusting one's instincts. The town's reaction wasn't universally positive, of course. Margaret occasionally overheard whispered conversations at the grocery store or caught disapproving looks from some of the more conservative residents. But for every raised eyebrow, there seemed to be two outstretched hands offering help and encouragement. One particularly memorable afternoon, Margaret found herself surrounded by a diverse group of women at a surprise baby shower organized by Sarah and the ladies from the animal shelter where she volunteered. As she looked around the room, she saw faces young and old. Some she had known for decades, and others she was just getting to know. Each had brought not just a gift, but a piece of advice, a favorite lullaby, or a funny story about their own experiences with motherhood. As the party wound down, Esther Rosenbaum, the town's oldest resident at 92, took Margaret's hand. "You know," she said, her voice scratchy with age but her eyes twinkling, "when I was a girl, they said women shouldn't have babies after 35, said it wasn't safe, wasn't natural. But look at you, proving them all wrong. You're showing us that life's got more surprises in store than any of us could imagine." Margaret felt tears welling up in her eyes. "I'm scared, Esther," she admitted softly. "What if I'm not up to this?" Esther squeezed her hand. "Oh, honey, being scared just means you understand what a big thing this is. But let me tell you something. This whole town is with you. This baby of yours. It's going to have 100 grandmas and grandpas, aunts and uncles, big brothers and sisters. You're not in this alone." As Margaret looked around the room, at the faces of friends old and new, she felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. This pregnancy, as unexpected and challenging as it was, had revealed the true heart of her community. In preparing to welcome a new life into the world, Millbrook had rediscovered its own vitality. That night, as Margaret sat in the newly furnished nursery, her hand resting on her swollen belly, she felt a profound sense of peace. The journey ahead would be difficult, there was no doubt about that. But she was no longer walking it alone. She had the strength of her community behind her, the love of her family surrounding her, and the miracle of new life growing within her. As the baby kicked beneath her palm, Margaret smiled. "Well, little one," she whispered, "I think we're as ready as we'll ever be. This old town's got a few surprises left in it yet, and so do I." The day Margaret had both anticipated and feared finally arrived on a warm June morning. She awoke to a strange sensation, a tightening in her lower back that slowly radiated around to her abdomen. At first, she dismissed it as another of the myriad discomforts that had become her constant companions over the past months. But as the feeling intensified and began to occur at regular intervals, a mix of excitement and trepidation washed over her. This was it. The baby was coming. With trembling hands, Margaret reached for her phone, calling Sarah first. Her daughter's voice, groggy with sleep, quickly sharpened as she realized what was happening. "I'm on my way, Mom," Sarah assured her. "Just breathe, okay? Everything's going to be fine." As Sarah made the short drive across town, Margaret's neighbor, Ellen, arrived, alerted by a text from Sarah. Ellen, a retired nurse, calmly helped Margaret time her contractions and gather her hospital bag. By the time Sarah pulled into the driveway, Margaret was as ready as she could be for the journey ahead. The drive to the hospital was surreal. Margaret watched the familiar streets of Millbrook slip by, realizing that the next time she saw them, her life would be irrevocably changed. Sarah kept up a steady stream of encouragement, her voice a soothing anchor amid the waves of contractions that were coming faster now. At the hospital, they were met by Dr. Hendricks and a team of specialists. The delivery room was a flurry of activity, monitors beeping and medical staff moving with practiced efficiency. Margaret felt a momentary pang of fear. At 64, she knew the risks were high for both her and the baby. But as another contraction gripped her, she found a well of strength she didn't know she possessed. Hours passed in a blur of pain, effort, and determination. Margaret, drawing on a strength she never knew she possessed, focused on each breath, each push. Sarah remained by her side, holding her hand and offering words of encouragement. The medical team worked tirelessly, monitoring both Margaret and the baby with intense concentration. As the sun began to set, painting the hospital room in warm hues, a new sound filled the air. The strong, lusty cry of a newborn. Margaret felt a surge of emotion so powerful it took her breath away as Dr. Hendricks placed a tiny, squirming bundle on her chest. "Congratulations, Margaret," he said, his eyes crinkling with genuine joy above his surgical mask. "You have a healthy baby girl." Tears streamed down Margaret's face as she gazed at her daughter for the first time. Despite the exhaustion that permeated every fiber of her being, she had never felt more alive. The baby, her skin still mottled and her eyes squinting against the light, nuzzled against Margaret's chest, seeking warmth and comfort. Sarah, her own eyes glistening with tears, leaned in to get a better look at her new sister. "Oh, Mom," she whispered. "She's perfect." As the medical team bustled around them, performing necessary checks and procedures, Margaret remained in a bubble of wonder. She counted tiny fingers and toes, marveled at the softness of her daughter's skin, and felt her heart expand with a love so fierce it was almost painful. In those first precious moments, all the doubts and fears that had plagued her throughout the pregnancy melted away. Yes, the road ahead would be challenging. Yes, there would be difficult days and sleepless nights. But looking into her daughter's face, Margaret knew with absolute certainty that every moment would be worth it. As night fell over Millbrook, news of the birth spread quickly. Margaret's phone buzzed with messages of congratulations and love. Michael, who had been anxiously waiting for news, promised to catch the first flight out in the morning. Even the nurses, who had seen countless births, seemed touched by the uniqueness of the situation, offering extra words of encouragement and support. Later that night, as Margaret cradled her sleeping daughter in the quiet of her hospital room, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From the shock of the initial diagnosis to the outpouring of support from her community, from the fears and doubts to the indescribable joy she now felt. Every step had led her here. "Welcome to the world, little one," Margaret whispered, placing a soft kiss on her daughter's forehead. "We've got quite the adventure ahead of us." As she settled back against her pillows, Margaret felt a profound sense of peace. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them with the same strength and determination that had brought her through this day. And she wouldn't face them alone. She had her family, her community, and now, this precious new life to give her purpose. The road ahead was uncertain, but Margaret Wilson was ready. At 64, she had embarked on the greatest adventure of her life, and she couldn't wait to see where it would lead. Chapter 6. New Beginnings. The first few weeks after bringing the baby home were a whirlwind of sleepless nights, diaper changes, and a steep learning curve. Margaret had named her daughter Hope, a testament to the unexpected joy and renewed sense of purpose she had brought into her life. Margaret's children, Sarah and Michael, took turns staying with her, helping her navigate the early days of motherhood. Their presence was a comfort, but it also highlighted the unique dynamics of their new family structure. Sarah, at 35, found herself in the unusual position of being both a big sister and an aunt to the same child. Michael, whose own kids were in elementary school, marveled at the energy his mother showed in caring for a newborn. "Mom," he said one evening, watching as Margaret gently rocked Hope to sleep, "I don't know how you do it. I was exhausted when our kids were this age, and I was half your age then." Margaret smiled tiredly. "I won't lie. It's not easy," she admitted. "But every time I look at her face, I find the energy to keep going. It's like I've been given this amazing gift, and I don't want to waste a single moment of it." As the days passed, Margaret settled into a routine. The community's support continued unabated. Meals appeared on her doorstep, often accompanied by notes of encouragement or small gifts for Hope. The local mothers group, which Margaret had initially been hesitant to join, welcomed her warmly, offering a wealth of modern parenting advice and a much-needed social outlet. There were challenges, of course. Margaret's body, while remarkably resilient, felt the strain of sleepless nights and constant caregiving more acutely than a younger mother might. She found herself needing to pace herself, to accept help when it was offered, and to find new ways to maintain her energy. One particularly difficult night, as Hope wailed inconsolably with colic, Margaret felt overwhelmed. Rocking her daughter in the nursery Mr. Grayson had so lovingly crafted, she found herself questioning her decision. Was she truly up to this task? Would she be able to give Hope everything she needed? As if sensing her mother's distress, Hope's cries suddenly subsided. She looked up at Margaret with wide, trusting eyes, her tiny hand wrapping around Margaret's finger. In that moment, Margaret felt a renewed surge of determination. Yes, this was hard. Yes, there would be moments of doubt. But the love she felt for this child would carry her through. As Hope grew, so did Margaret's confidence. She discovered reserves of patience she never knew she had, a capacity for joy in the smallest moments, the first smile, the first laugh, the first time Hope rolled over. Each milestone was celebrated not just by Margaret, but by the entire town of Millbrook. Margaret's approach to motherhood was a blend of old-school wisdom and modern techniques. She sang the lullabies her own mother had sung to her, but also embraced the baby-wearing slings and organic baby foods that Sarah swore by. She read voraciously, determined to stay informed about the latest in child development and health. As Hope's first birthday approached, Margaret found herself reflecting on the whirlwind year that had passed. Her body had changed, bearing new lines and carrying a weariness she hadn't known before. But her spirit felt more alive than ever. She moved through her days with a sense of purpose, her world both smaller, often revolving around Hope's needs, and infinitely larger, filled with new experiences and perspectives. The birthday party was a town-wide affair, held in Margaret's backyard on a perfect summer day. Hope, now taking her first tentative steps, toddled from guest to guest, charming everyone with her infectious giggles and curious nature. As Margaret watched her daughter explore the world with wide-eyed wonder, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. This journey, unexpected and challenging as it had been, had given her life new meaning. She was not just a mother. She was a symbol of resilience, a testament to the idea that it's never too late for a new beginning. That night, after the party had wound down and Hope was sleeping peacefully in her crib, Margaret sat in her garden. The roses she had tended for so many years were in full bloom, their sweet scent filling the air. But now, alongside the familiar plants, a new addition had taken root. A small apple tree, planted on the day Hope was born. Margaret smiled, running her hand along the tree's slender trunk. Like Hope, it was just beginning its journey, full of potential and promise. And like Hope, it would grow and flourish under Margaret's loving care. As the stars came out, twinkling in the velvet sky, Margaret made a silent promise to herself and to Hope. They would face whatever challenges lay ahead together, with love, with courage, and with the unwavering support of their community. The future was uncertain, but it was also full of possibilities. Margaret Wilson, at 65, was ready for whatever adventures tomorrow might bring. With Hope by her side, she knew that the best was yet to come. As Hope grew from a toddler to a vibrant young girl, Margaret found herself navigating the joys and challenges of raising a child in her golden years. The unique dynamic of their relationship became a source of both delight and occasional difficulty. By the time Hope started elementary school, Margaret was in her early 70s. She had always been active, but now she pushed herself to stay fit and healthy, determined to keep up with her energetic daughter. Yoga classes and daily walks became part of her routine, and she embraced a healthier diet, often preparing nutritious meals with Hope as her eager little sous chef. The age gap between them sometimes led to amusing situations. During a parent-teacher conference, Hope's first-grade teacher initially mistook Margaret for her grandmother. Margaret handled such moments with grace and humor, using them as opportunities to educate others about the diversity of family structures. Hope, for her part, seemed unfazed by having an older mother. To her, Margaret was simply Mom, the person who read her bedtime stories, kissed her scrapes better, and cheered the loudest at her school plays. However, as Hope grew older and more aware of the world around her, questions naturally arose. One evening, as they sat in the garden tending to the vegetables they had planted together, Hope asked, "Mom, why are you older than my friends?" "Parents." Margaret paused, considering her words carefully. "Well, sweetheart," she began, "families come in all shapes and sizes. I became your mom a little later in life than most, but that just means I had more time to get ready for you. And it means I appreciate every moment we have together even more." Hope seemed to ponder this for a moment before nodding sagely. "I'm glad you waited for me," she said, throwing her arms around Margaret in a fierce hug. As the years passed, Margaret worked hard to strike a balance between being a devoted mother and preparing Hope for a future where she might not always be present. She encouraged Hope's independence, fostered her curiosity about the world, and worked to build a strong support network around her. Sarah and Michael, now comfortably settled into their roles as much older siblings, were constant presences in Hope's life. They made sure that their children, Hope's nieces and nephews who were closer to her in age, spent plenty of time with their young aunt, forming bonds that Margaret hoped would last a lifetime. The Millbrook community continued to play a vital role in their lives. Hope grew up surrounded by a village of honorary grandparents, each contributing to her upbringing in their own unique way. Mr. Grayson taught her woodworking, Mrs. Chen introduced her to the art of origami, and Esther Rosenbaum, now over 100 years old, regaled her with stories of a world long past. There were difficult conversations, too, as Hope grew old enough to understand the realities of her mother's age. Margaret was open about the challenges they might face, always emphasizing the depth of her love and her commitment to being there for Hope in whatever way she could, for as long as she could. Together, they planned for the future. Margaret set up trusts and made arrangements to ensure Hope's financial security. She wrote letters to be given to Hope on future birthdays and milestones, a way of being present even if she could not be there physically. And she encouraged Hope to dream big, to embrace life with the same courage and optimism that had led Margaret to embrace motherhood at 64. As Hope entered her teenage years, their relationship evolved. There were arguments and door slammings, as in any household with a teenager. But there was also a deepening bond, a mutual appreciation for the precious time they shared. On Hope's 16th birthday, Margaret, now 80, watched with pride as her daughter blew out the candles on her cake, surrounded by friends and family. Hope had grown into a compassionate, intelligent young woman with a fierce, independent streak and a kind heart. Later that evening, as the party wound down, Hope found Margaret sitting in her favorite spot in the garden. Without a word, she sat down beside her mother and leaned her head on her shoulder. "Thank you, Mom," Hope said softly. "For what, sweetheart?" Margaret asked, wrapping an arm around her daughter. "For everything. For taking a chance on me. For showing me that it's never too late to follow your heart." Margaret felt tears prick her eyes as she hugged Hope close. "Oh, my darling girl," she whispered, "you have been the greatest adventure of my life." As they sat together in the garden, the apple tree, now tall and strong, rustled gently in the evening breeze. Margaret marveled at how much had changed since that fateful day in Dr. Hendrick's office, and how much unexpected joy had filled her life since then. The future was still uncertain. Margaret knew that the coming years would bring new challenges as she continued to age. But looking at Hope, strong and capable and full of promise, she felt a sense of peace. Whatever lay ahead, the love between them would endure. Margaret had rewritten the story of what was possible, challenging assumptions and inspiring others to embrace life's unexpected turns. And Hope, her beautiful, miraculous daughter, would carry that legacy forward, a living testament to the power of love, courage, and the endless possibilities of the human spirit. As the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, Margaret and Hope sat side by side, two generations united by an unconventional journey, grateful for every moment they had shared and hopeful for all that was yet to come. 20 years had passed since that warm June day when Hope entered the world, forever changing Margaret's life. Now, on a crisp autumn morning, the garden that had witnessed so much of their journey together was once again the setting for a gathering of family and friends. Margaret, now nearing her 85th birthday, sat in a comfortable chair, a handmade quilt draped over her lap. Her hair had long since turned silver, and lines of laughter and experience etched her face. But her eyes, bright and alert, sparkled with the same vitality that had carried her through the unexpected journey of late motherhood. Before her, Hope stood radiant in a simple white dress, her hand clasped tightly in that of her partner, Alex. Today was their wedding day, a celebration of love and new beginnings that echoed Margaret's own leap of faith all those years ago. As Margaret watched Hope and Alex exchange vows under an arch entwined with roses from her garden, she felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her. Against all odds, she had been given the gift of seeing her daughter grow into a remarkable woman, of witnessing this milestone that once seemed an impossible dream. The years hadn't always been easy. There had been health scares and difficult conversations about the future. Margaret had worked hard to stay active and engaged, determined to be present for as much of Hope's life as possible. And Hope, in turn, had shown a maturity beyond her years, balancing her own dreams and ambitions with a deep commitment to her mother. As the newlyweds shared their first dance, Margaret's mind drifted back through the tapestry of memories they had woven together. She remembered Hope's first steps, taken in this very garden. Her first day of school, with Margaret fighting back tears as she waved goodbye at the classroom door. The teenage struggles and triumphs, the late-night conversations about life, love, and the future. Each memory was a treasure, a testament to the unconventional but beautiful life they had built together. The reception was a joyous affair, filled with laughter and love. Sarah and Michael, now in their 50s, moved among the guests with their own children, the family bonds strong despite the unusual age dynamics. The Millbrook community, which had rallied around Margaret and Hope from the beginning, was well represented, with faces both familiar and new joining in the celebration. As the evening wore on, Hope made her way to Margaret's side, kneeling down to embrace her mother. "I love you, Mom," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for everything." Margaret cupped her daughter's face in her hands, her heart overflowing with love and pride. "My darling girl," she said softly, "you have been the greatest blessing of my life. I am so proud of the woman you've become." Hope smiled through her tears. "You know," she said, "Alex and I have been talking. When we have children, we want them to know your story. We want them to know that love doesn't follow a timeline, that families come in all forms, and that it's never too late for a miracle." Margaret felt a lump form in her throat. The idea that her journey would inspire future generations, that the love she and Hope shared would ripple outward through time, was overwhelming. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, Margaret looked out over the gathering. She saw the life she had built, the lives she had touched, the legacy of love and courage that would live on long after she was gone. In that moment, Margaret Wilson felt a profound sense of peace. Her life had taken an unexpected turn. But oh, what a beautiful journey it had been. She had challenged conventions, redefined what it meant to be a mother, and shown that it's never too late to embrace life's surprises. As Hope rejoined the celebration, her laughter ringing out across the garden, Margaret closed her eyes and let the sounds of joy wash over her. The chatter of guests, the clinking of glasses, the soft strains of music, all of it blended into a beautiful symphony of life and love. Margaret's thoughts drifted to the future. She knew that her time with Hope, with this family she had built, was precious and finite. Yet she felt no fear, no regret. Instead, she was filled with a sense of completion, of a life well lived and a love that would endure. She thought of the letters she had written over the years, tucked away for Hope to read in the future. Letters filled with advice, memories, and all the things she might not be able to say in person. She thought of the trust funds she had set up, not just for Hope, but for the grandchildren she might never meet. Seeds planted for a future she had helped shape, even if she wouldn't be there to see it bloom. As the evening deepened into night, lanterns were lit around the garden, casting a warm glow over the gathering. Margaret watched as Hope and Alex swayed together on the makeshift dance floor, lost in each other's eyes. She saw Sarah and Michael, proudly watching their little sister, the unusual family dynamics long since accepted and celebrated. Mr. Grayson's great-granddaughter, barely older than Hope had been when he built her nursery, shyly offered Margaret a slice of wedding cake. The little girl's eyes widened as Margaret regaled her with the story of how the whole town had come together to welcome Hope into the world. As the night wore on, guests began to say their goodbyes. Many stopped to embrace Margaret, to thank her for the inspiration she had been, for the way her story had touched their lives. She received each thank you with grace, marveling at the ripple effects of the choice she had made so many years ago. Finally, as the last guests departed, Hope and Alex came to sit beside Margaret. In the quiet of the garden, with the stars twinkling overhead, the three of them talked softly about the day, about the future, about the endless possibilities that life held. "Mom," Hope said, her eyes shining with love and gratitude, "I want you to know that whatever happens, whatever the future brings, the love you've given me will always be my foundation. You taught me that life can surprise you, that it's never too late to start a new chapter. I promise to carry that lesson with me always." Margaret reached out. taking Hope's hand in one of hers and Alex's in the other. "My darlings," she said, her voice soft but strong, "life is a gift, every single day of it. I've been blessed with more love, more joy, more adventure than I ever thought possible. And it all started with a leap of faith." She squeezed their hands, looking from Hope to Alex and back again. "Promise me you'll always be open to life's surprises. Promise me you'll love fiercely, live fully, and never be afraid to rewrite the rules." As Hope and Alex nodded, tears glistening in their eyes, Margaret felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. She had lived a life beyond her wildest dreams, had loved and been loved in return. And now, as one chapter was ending, a new one was beginning. The future stretched out before them, full of possibilities. Margaret knew that whatever it held, the love she and Hope had shared would live on, in memories, in stories, in the lives of generations to come. It would be a legacy of courage, of resilience, and of the transformative power of unconditional love. As the night deepened and a cool breeze rustled through the garden, Margaret Wilson, mother, friend, and inspiration, looked to the stars and smiled. Her unexpected journey had been more beautiful than she could have ever imagined, and its echoes would resonate far into the future, a testament to the enduring power of love and the miraculous potential of every single day. In the years that followed Hope's wedding, Margaret's legacy continued to unfold in ways she could never have anticipated. Her story, once a subject of local fascination, had grown to inspire people far beyond the borders of Millbrook. A best-selling memoir, co-written with Hope, shared their unique journey with the world, touching hearts and challenging perceptions about age, motherhood, and the nature of family. Margaret found herself in demand as a speaker, her gentle wisdom and unwavering optimism resonating with audiences of all ages. Though her energy wasn't what it once was, she embraced these opportunities with the same courage that had led her to motherhood at 64. Each speaking engagement was a chance to spread her message of hope and resilience, to encourage others to embrace life's unexpected turns. Hope, meanwhile, had taken the lessons of her unconventional upbringing to heart. As a social worker specializing in non-traditional families, she became an advocate for older parents and helped facilitate adoptions for those who, like Margaret, found themselves yearning for parenthood later in life. Her work, inspired by her own experience, helped to shift societal perceptions and create support systems for families that didn't fit the conventional mold. The Millbrook community, which had rallied around Margaret and Hope from the beginning, became a model for intergenerational support. Inspired by their story, the town implemented programs that brought together seniors and young families, fostering connections that enriched lives across the age spectrum. The garden where Hope had taken her first steps became a community space, hosting storytelling events where Margaret and other elders shared their wisdom with wide-eyed children. As Margaret entered her 90s, her physical capabilities began to wane, but her spirit remained as vibrant as ever. Hope and Alex, true to their word, had started a family of their own. Margaret delighted in her role as grandmother, her age now a benefit as she shared stories and perspectives from nearly a century of life with her wide-eyed grandchildren. On warm afternoons, Margaret could often be found in her favorite spot in the garden, surrounded by 3 generations of her family. She would watch contentedly as Hope chased her own children through the flower beds, their laughter a melody that filled her heart with joy. In these moments, the years seemed to melt away, and she was transported back to those early days of motherhood, when every moment with Hope felt like a precious gift. The apple tree, planted on the day of Hope's birth, now stood tall and strong, its branches heavy with fruit each autumn. It had become a symbol of their journey, a living testament to the growth and abundance that can come from a single act of faith. Margaret's grandchildren delighted in climbing its sturdy limbs, unaware of the deep significance it held for their grandmother and mother. As she approached her 100th birthday, Margaret faced her mortality with the same grace and courage that had defined her late motherhood. She and Hope had many deep conversations about life, death, and the legacies we leave behind. Though the thought of leaving Hope was painful, Margaret felt a profound sense of peace. She had lived fully, loved deeply, and made an impact that would ripple through generations. "My darling," she told Hope one evening, as they sat together watching the sunset, "when I'm gone, don't think of it as an ending. Think of it as the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another. Everything we've shared, everything we've built together, will live on through you, through your children, and through all the lives we've touched." Hope, her eyes glistening with tears, squeezed her mother's hand. "You've given me so much, Mom. More than I could ever express. Your courage, your love. It's shaped not just my life, but the lives of so many others. I promise to keep your spirit alive, to pass on the lessons you've taught me." Margaret's centennial celebration was a town-wide event, a joyous affirmation of a life well lived. People came from far and wide to pay tribute to the woman who had challenged conventions and inspired so many. There were speeches and songs, laughter and tears as friends and family shared stories of how Margaret had touched their lives. In a quiet moment during the festivities, Margaret found herself alone in her garden. As she looked out over the flowers and trees that had been her constant companions for so many years, she felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her. Her life had taken an unexpected turn, but oh, what a beautiful journey it had been. She thought of the young woman she had been, nervously sitting in Dr. Hendrick's office all those years ago, hearing the shocking news of her pregnancy. If she could go back and whisper in that woman's ear, what would she say? Perhaps simply this: trust in love, embrace the unknown. The greatest adventures often come disguised as our biggest challenges. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, Margaret closed her eyes and let the sounds of the celebration wash over her. The laughter of her grandchildren, the gentle murmur of conversations, the soft strains of music, all of it blended into a beautiful symphony of life and love. In that moment, Margaret Wilson felt the full weight of her journey, the joys and sorrows, the triumphs and challenges, the love that had sustained her through it all. She had rewritten the rules of what was possible, had shown that it's never too late to embrace life's surprises, to open one's heart to love and new beginnings. As twilight deepened into night, Margaret made her way back to the party, leaning on Hope's arm. She looked out over the gathering, her family, her friends, the community that had become an extended family, and felt a sense of completion. Whatever the future held, she knew that the love she had nurtured would continue to grow and flourish, a living legacy that would endure long after she was gone. In the years that followed, Margaret's story continued to inspire. It was shared in classrooms and support groups, in books and documentaries. It became a touchstone for those facing their own unexpected journeys, a reminder that life's greatest gifts often come in the most surprising packages. Hope, guided by her mother's example, continued to advocate for non-traditional families. She established a foundation in Margaret's name, dedicated to supporting older parents and promoting intergenerational connections. The foundation's work helped to change policies and perceptions, creating a more inclusive and supportive society for families of all kinds. Margaret's grandchildren, raised on stories of their remarkable grandmother, grew into compassionate and courageous adults. They carried forward the lessons of Margaret's life in their own ways. One became a geriatric physician, inspired by the vitality she had witnessed in her grandmother's later years. Another pursued a career in environmental conservation, driven by memories of long afternoons spent in Margaret's beloved garden. The town of Millbrook, forever changed by Margaret and Hope's story, became known as a model community for intergenerational living. The programs that had sprung up in the wake of their journey expanded and evolved, creating a rich tapestry of connection between young and old. Visitors came from around the world to study the Millbrook model, seeking to replicate its success in their own communities. As the years passed, Margaret's physical presence faded, but her spirit lived on vibrantly in the lives she had touched. Hope, now a grandmother herself, often found herself sharing her mother's wisdom with her own grandchildren. She would take them to the garden, now a thriving community space, and tell them stories of the remarkable woman who had embraced motherhood at 64 and changed countless lives in the process. "Your great-grandmother," Hope would say, her eyes twinkling with love and memory, "taught me that life is full of surprises, and that love knows no boundaries, not age, not convention, not anything. She showed me that it's never too late to start a new chapter, to open your heart to new possibilities." And as Hope's grandchildren listened wide-eyed to tales of their great-grandmother's courage and love, the legacy of Margaret Wilson continued to grow and flourish, a testament to the enduring power of love, the strength of the human spirit, and the beautiful unpredictability of life. In homes and community centers, in classrooms and support groups, Margaret's story was shared and celebrated. It became a beacon of hope for those facing their own unexpected journeys, a reminder that life's greatest adventures often begin with a leap of faith. The apple tree in the garden, now ancient and gnarled but still bearing fruit, stood as a living monument to Margaret's journey. Its roots ran deep, nourished by decades of love and care, its branches reaching skyward, ever growing, ever changing, just as Margaret's legacy continued to evolve and inspire. And so, long after Margaret Wilson had left this earthly plane, her story lived on, in the lives she had touched, in the changes she had inspired, and in the enduring power of her love. It served as a reminder to all who heard it that life is precious and unpredictable, that love knows no boundaries, and that it's never too late to embrace the miraculous potential of every single day. In the end, Margaret's journey, from the shocking news in Dr. Hendrick's office to the rich, full life she had lived, was more than just one woman's story. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the transformative power of love, and the beautiful possibilities that await when we have the courage to say yes to life's unexpected gifts. And in gardens and homes, in quiet moments of reflection and joyous family gatherings, in the face of challenges and the embrace of new beginnings, Margaret's legacy lived on, a timeless reminder that love, in all its forms, is the greatest adventure of all. As the years turned into decades, the ripple effects of Margaret's courageous decision continued to shape lives in ways she could never have imagined. Her story, once a local legend, had become a global phenomenon, inspiring countless individuals to reimagine the possibilities of their own lives. In universities around the world, Margaret and Hope's journey became a case study in courses ranging from sociology to gerontology. Scholars delved into the societal implications of their story, examining how it challenged traditional notions of family, age, and parenthood. Dissertations were written, analyzing the Margaret effect, a term coined to describe the surge in older individuals pursuing parenthood or other major life changes inspired by her example. The Margaret Wilson Foundation, established by Hope in her mother's honor, grew into a powerful force for social change. What began as a small organization supporting older parents blossomed into a multifaceted institution dedicated to breaking down age-related barriers in all aspects of life. The foundation funded research into the benefits of intergenerational living, provided grants for innovative community programs, and lobbied for policy changes to support non-traditional families. One of the foundation's most impactful initiatives was the New Chapter program, which provided resources and support for individuals looking to make significant life changes later in life. Whether it was pursuing a new career, going back to school, or becoming a parent, the program offered guidance, financial assistance, and a supportive community. Thousands of people, inspired by Margaret's story, found the courage to embark on their own unexpected journeys. In Millbrook, the Garden of New Beginnings, once Margaret's private sanctuary, had become a renowned public space. The garden, carefully tended by a team of volunteers ranging from school children to retirees, served as a living classroom and a symbol of continuous growth and renewal. Visitors from around the world came to walk its winding paths, each turn revealing a new facet of Margaret and Hope's story. The centerpiece of the garden remained the apple tree, now over a century old. Its gnarled trunk and spreading branches told the story of a life well lived, of strength gained through weathering storms, of the sweet fruits that come from patient nurturing. Arborists marveled at its longevity, speculating that the love and care it had received over the years had imbued it with an almost mythical vitality. Each autumn, when the tree bore fruit, the town of Millbrook held a festival in Margaret's honor. People gathered to share stories, make apple pies using Margaret's recipe, and celebrate the enduring power of love and community. It was a time of joy and reflection, a yearly reminder of the extraordinary legacy born from one woman's leap of faith. In hospitals and clinics around the world, the Margaret Wilson Protocol became standard practice for older expectant mothers. This comprehensive approach to geriatric pregnancy care, developed based on the lessons learned from Margaret's journey, had significantly improved outcomes for both mothers and babies. It encompassed not just medical care, but also psychological support, community engagement, and long-term planning. The impact on medical research was equally profound. Margaret's case had sparked a renewed interest in the study of fertility and aging. Scientists, intrigued by the unique circumstances of Hope's conception and birth, made breakthrough discoveries about the human reproductive system. These findings led to new fertility treatments and a deeper understanding of the body's regenerative capabilities, benefiting countless individuals struggling with infertility. In the realm of popular culture, Margaret and Hope's story continued to captivate hearts and minds. Best-selling novels, award-winning films, and hit television series drew inspiration from their journey, exploring themes of unconventional families, late-life transformations, and the unbreakable bonds between mothers and daughters. These portrayals helped to normalize diverse family structures and challenge societal expectations about age and parenthood. Hope, now in her golden years herself, had become a respected elder in her own right. Her lifelong work advocating for non-traditional families and promoting intergenerational connections had earned her numerous accolades, including a Nobel Peace Prize nomination. But for Hope, the greatest reward was seeing her mother's legacy continue to grow and evolve. In her role as the keeper of Margaret's story, Hope traveled the world, speaking to audiences about her extraordinary childhood and the lessons she had learned from her remarkable mother. Her talks were always packed, drawing people of all ages eager to hear firsthand about the woman who had redefined what was possible. "My mother," Hope would often say, her eyes twinkling with the same spark that had lit Margaret's, "taught me that life is a series of new beginnings, that every day, no matter our age or circumstances, we have the opportunity to start fresh, to love deeper, to dream bigger. She showed me that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to embrace life fully despite it." As Hope shared these words, audiences would lean in, captivated. Many would leave her talks with tears in their eyes and a newfound determination in their hearts. It wasn't uncommon for Hope to receive letters months or even years later from individuals who had been inspired to make significant changes in their lives after hearing Margaret's story. One such letter came from a 70-year-old man in Australia who, inspired by Margaret, had adopted a young child from foster care. Another was from a woman in her 50s who had finally pursued her dream of becoming a doctor. Each story was a testament to the enduring power of Margaret's legacy, a reminder that one life lived with courage and love could spark transformation in countless others. In retirement communities and nursing homes, Margaret's story became a source of hope and empowerment. Social workers and caregivers used it to encourage residents to remain engaged and open to new experiences, regardless of their age. Many facilities implemented programs inspired by Margaret's journey, fostering connections with younger generations and providing opportunities for continued growth and learning. The impact extended to policymaking as well. Governments around the world, recognizing the changing demographics and inspired by the Millbrook model, began to implement policies that supported intergenerational living and provided resources for older individuals starting new chapters in their lives. Retirement age became a fluid concept, with more support for those choosing to work, study, or take on new roles later in life. In schools, Margaret and Hope's story became part of the curriculum, used to teach children about diversity, resilience, and the importance of challenging societal norms. Young students were encouraged to interview older relatives and community members, fostering connections between generations and preserving important stories and wisdom. The technology sector, too, felt the influence of Margaret's legacy. Inspired by the challenges and triumphs of her late-life motherhood, innovators developed new technologies to support older parents and caregivers. From advanced baby monitors designed for those with reduced mobility to AI companions that could assist with childcare while providing cognitive stimulation for older adults, these innovations helped to make late-life parenthood more accessible and manageable. Environmental scientists and urban planners studied the Garden of New Beginnings as a model for creating green spaces that could foster community connections and promote well-being across generations. The garden's design principles, which emphasized accessibility, interactive learning spaces, and areas for both solitude and social gathering, were replicated in cities around the world. In the arts, Margaret's journey continued to inspire creators across mediums. Painters captured the vibrant colors of her garden. Sculptors immortalized the bond between her and Hope in bronze and marble, and composers wrote symphonies that echoed the complex emotions of her extraordinary life. Each year, the Margaret Wilson Arts Festival in Millbrook showcased works inspired by her story, drawing artists and art lovers from around the globe. As the world faced new challenges, climate change, technological disruptions, shifting demographics, Margaret's story remained a touchstone, a reminder of the human capacity for adaptation, love, and growth. In times of uncertainty, people would turn to her example, finding strength in the tale of a woman who had embraced the unknown with open arms and created a beautiful new reality. Hope's grandchildren, now adults with children of their own, took up the mantle of preserving and sharing their great-grandmother's legacy. They established the Margaret Wilson Scholarship, which provided funding for older students returning to education or individuals pursuing unconventional paths in life. The scholarship recipients, known as Margaret's Pioneers, went on to make significant contributions in various fields, each carrying forward the spirit of courage and innovation that Margaret had embodied. In the realm of scientific research, the Margaret Wilson phenomenon continued to intrigue geneticists and biologists. Studies of Hope's DNA and that of her descendants revealed fascinating insights into longevity and vitality. While no definitive conclusions could be drawn, many scientists speculated that the unique circumstances of Hope's conception and Margaret's late-life motherhood had triggered epigenetic changes that contributed to exceptional health outcomes in their family line. As the centennial of Margaret's fateful doctor's appointment approached, preparations began for a global celebration of her life and legacy. The event, coordinated by the Margaret Wilson Foundation, would include simultaneous gatherings in cities around the world, a 24-hour telethon sharing stories of lives changed by her example, and the inauguration of the Margaret Wilson Center for Life Reimagined, a state-of-the-art research and education facility dedicated to supporting individuals in all stages of life to pursue new beginnings. In Millbrook, now known worldwide as the Town of New Beginnings, the celebration would be particularly poignant. The entire community came together to plan a week-long festival, culminating in a gathering in the Garden of New Beginnings. The ancient apple tree, still standing strong, would serve as the backdrop for a ceremony honoring Margaret's legacy and recommitting to the values of love, courage, and community that she had exemplified. As Hope stood beneath the spreading branches of the apple tree, surrounded by 4 generations of her family and countless individuals whose lives had been touched by her mother's story, she felt a profound sense of continuity. The legacy of Margaret Wilson, a legacy of love, courage, and the endless possibility of new beginnings, lived on, not just in her descendants, but in every life that had been inspired to embrace the unexpected, to love without boundaries, and to live every day as an opportunity for growth and joy. In that moment, as the sun set on another day in the garden her mother had loved so dearly, Hope could almost feel Margaret's presence. She imagined her mother's gentle smile, her eyes twinkling with that familiar mix of mischief and wisdom. And in the rustling of the apple tree's leaves, Hope fancied she could hear her mother's voice, still encouraging, still full of love. Remember, my darling, it's never too late for a new adventure. Life is always full of surprises, always ready to bloom in the most unexpected ways. All we need is the courage to say yes, to open our hearts to the possibilities. For in the end, love is the greatest adventure of all. And as these words echoed in Hope's heart, she knew that Margaret's journey, a journey that had begun with a shocking diagnosis and blossomed into a legacy that had touched millions, was far from over. It lived on in every act of courage, every unexpected joy, every new beginning embraced by those who had been touched by her story. In gardens and homes, in quiet moments of reflection and joyous family gatherings, in the face of challenges and the embrace of new beginnings, Margaret's legacy continued to grow, a living testament to the enduring power of love and the beautiful unpredictability of life. And in the hearts of all who knew her story, Margaret Wilson lived on, forever young, forever courageous, forever ready to embrace the next great adventure.